Let's do a short video on teaching the basics of vibrato. So, first of all, I think it's helpful to help us to get the student doing this with a metronome so that we get the control over these muscles. We do the vibrato on the saxophone with the jaw. I think it might be best to say va, 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 va. If you say wah, 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 you can move just your lips and not your jaw. Although it can work. A lot of people say wah, 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 wah. But I think it works better teaching to go va, 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 va. This makes you actually move the jaw. And then I've got the metronome playing, so that I'm going to put this at 60. This is where the metronome is right now at 60. And I'm going to pulse 4 pulses, in other words, 16th notes at 60 with va, 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 va. We go all the way down the horn, clear down to low B flat. I start on a high B. And then I'll come back. And I'll go up to the high F sharp. So that I've done this vibrato on every note on the horn every day. 4 counts of vibrato on every note. Some notes are more resistant and stuffy, and you have to kind of push the vibrato a little more. And other notes are really live and bright. You have to pull the vibrato back, restrain it. So we want uniformity in our vibrato, but we don't. What we do to get uniformity is not uniform. Hence, we need to practice it on every note so we know exactly how to make it uniform on each individual note, depending on its resistance level and so on. Then, once we get there, now some students may not be able to play that fast, so if we need to, we can start with 8 notes. We might move that up to triplets. Etc. And then when I can finally get to 16 notes, then I'll start to gradually move the metronome up. So I'm not going to take the time with you to move it up gradually, but let's say we move it up to 72. This was kind of what Mule felt was the development speed that he wanted. In the Mule version of the Fairling etudes, every slow piece movement, every slow, all the even odd number ones, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, etc., are all marked at 72. That's because he actually had his students vibrate at 72 in rhythm with the etudes. Later, he amended his thoughts that he thought 76 was a better tempo for that. I think that probably our vibrato speed runs somewhere between 76 and 80 as a kind of a normal finished vibrato speed. Here's 80. So on. Maybe 72 to 80. In that area. I would have the student continue practicing it clear up to 92. And 92 is ridiculously fast. We'd never vibrato that fast. But I think it's helpful to get your vibrato sped up like that, because then when you work in around 76 to 80, it's comfortable. You're not working at your peak. It makes it much easier to settle in, and it sounds natural and flows nicely. This is how I would start a young student on vibrato. There's so much to know more about vibrato in terms of how do we use it stylistically, how do we apply this to notes and so on. I don't think we need to get into that here. I've got another chapter that we'll do some of that work on. I do want to illustrate one more thing, though, kind of illustrate what I mentioned a minute ago of what Mule does with his students. I had this happen yesterday. Student in his lesson said, "I'm playing this piece for the All-State Band audition. Could you help me with it?" Well, he wasn't using any vibrato. And so I recommended that we start pulsing at 16th notes. I think it helped a lot to get his vibrato actually initiated. Because I said, well, play with vibrato. He just couldn't get it to start. So, all right, pulse 16th notes. As we go along, we're going to get this really narrow. The classical vibrato should be very narrow. Not so. We don't want it to be wide. When we first start practicing at 60, it's going to be pretty wide. I think that's okay. As we speed up, we get closer to 76, 80, on up to 92, it's going to get more narrow and narrow. That's where we want it in the end. We want a finished product where the vibrato is really quite narrow. It doesn't even have to be all that fast if it's very narrow. In fact, sometimes I've found it's really useful to have a student, I'll say, don't use vibrato, just hold the note straight. But as you're holding it, see if you can introduce this slow, almost imperceptible shimmer. Especially useful as a soprano. Soprano is like having a magnifying glass on all your faults. So if you make soprano vibrato feel like it does on tenor or alto, it's going to be too wide. It's got to be really super narrow on the soprano. And so I think it really helps to narrow it up if you can kind of maybe not even think of pulsing, just think of a shimmer. The more narrow, the better. Much better if it's not wide. But I think at the beginning it's okay. And we'll practice it with the metronome simply to get the muscles really coordinated, get control of the muscles. If a student really got stuck on that playing 4 pulses per beat, we really don't want the vibrato to be tied to the pulse like that. Then I would have them practice 5 pulses per beat so that it kind of breaks out of that 4 pulses and it also sounds like it's not coordinated to the pulse. Even if they did coordinate 5 to the beat, it wouldn't sound so much like it's coordinated to the pulse. So I think maybe that's enough just on the basics of vibrato. We'll come back in another chapter and deal with vibrato issues and solving problems with vibrato. So thanks for watching. Hopefully that's helpful.